Rodriguez is one of these names in horror I'm seeing crop up more often. I've reviewed a few movies of his, and he writes and directs Visher. Now, Rodriguez tends to focus on found footage movies, and this one again is found footage, at least partially. So the story of Visher is about this scammer, this Indian guy who works in a kind of call centre who effectively scams people out of money through various different means, normally pretending to be like the bank or something, gaining passwords and access information, etc. And he ends up trying to scam this woman, and she is alone in this kind of house, and he ends up kind of taking a little bit of a fancy to her, even becoming somewhat obsessed by her, you might say. But he starts to notice something when he dials into her security system and is able to see through the security cameras in her home that there's something going on that could well be supernatural. And he sees that there is a basement in the house which she is unaware of, which is kind of hidden. And this may well contain some type of dark entity that may well affect this woman Ruth as she begins to investigate. Now, what will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. So the real horror here, of course, is the scammers. We probably all come across something like that one time in our life, and it's an interesting idea here to have a scammer as the protagonist. They do try and humanise this character by sort of showing us that he is somewhat regretful and feels guilty for what he's doing. But nonetheless, I think it's certainly an interesting choice, and certainly a very modern take with the rise in, cybercrime and the like, and the increasing amount of these kind of online scams that are going on. Very much a kind of a modern horror story. So why is this partially found footage? We see sequences with this character in his kind of office working in a traditionally style film. When he is viewing Ruth's home, we see what he sees through the computer. So through her phone, her webcam, her security camera and things like that. So it's kind of partial found footage. So it's kind of like a, if you're not a huge fan of the found footage genre because you don't like the shaky cam and things like that, it's not really like that, because the cameras that we are looking through are for the most part static, and we do get a mix of traditionally filmed and the kind of views through various security systems and stuff. So it doesn't feel like a found footage movie in a traditional sense, but it has some sensibilities of that, which gives it this kind of hybrid feel. And there are some genuinely jump out your seat scares in this movie. They're kind of jump scares and stuff, but I think they're relatively kind of well handled and stuff. And it got me a few times, I won't lie. The movie takes an interesting couple of twists as it goes through. And as I say, I think it's quite brave to have a protagonist who is ultimately a criminal, and something which probably most people will think quite poorly of. So that was kind of, it's an interesting take. And the movie has this, outside of the supernatural stuff that we kind of see on screen here, it has a creepier edge to it, where we see this Suresh guy spying and becoming obsessed with this woman, and we kind of know that we don't see it on screen, but he's kind of like bashing the bishop and stuff whilst he's spying on this woman. It gets a little bit icky as the film goes on, without really ever sort of showing us anything, but the context is there, so to speak. So I thought this movie was quite kind of creepy on multiple levels, you might say. The movie is quite short, so it ends up being quite a kind of a punchy movie. What doesn't work in this movie's favour, I think the guy who plays Suresh, which is this Indian guy who's on this, this call centre type, I think his acting is a little mixed. I think there are times when I think his performance is fine, but there are other times where I think it somewhat kind of overacts and there's a little bit on the hammy side, especially when he's kind of emoting, shall we say. So yeah, I think his kind of performance was a little mixed. I think it's a little bit over-exaggerated in regard to some plot details, both in what happens in the actual story of the film and also what this guy is able to do in regards to how easily the technology he's using seems to kind of work. So it's a little bit, it feels a little bit hokey at times, I have to say. There are some kind of quite good scares, but I can't help but feel it's a little bit on the hokey side. And then I have to say, when we get to our finale, the movie has a somewhat of a twist, and it's kind of creepy. I can see why they did it, and I understand, you know, it's somewhat subverting your expectations, but I don't think it almost makes less sense than you are originally led to believe, is the best way I would describe it. You know, we see certain things on screen as the film goes on, and you know, it's you know, obviously somewhat supernatural, but by what we see, and then when we get to the end, it almost seems a little bit too unbelievable, is the best way I would describe it. So it ends up, unfortunately, undercutting what was genuinely quite a, at times at least, fraught horror movie that has some good scares in it. Overall, it's not a bad movie, but I don't think it really is all that memorable when it comes down to it, and I do feel the ending lets this down. I will give it a 5 out of 10 though. I think there are some enjoyment to be had with it, and I think I appreciated the sort of different take on a protagonist and this kind of setup, which probably most people can relate to in regards to having to deal with kind of an online scammer. So yeah, it's a 5 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please let me know what your thoughts are, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.